Welcome to Lesson 6.2 of the Grant Architect course. In this lesson, we explore governance and leadership, focusing on how to describe your board of directors, fiscal oversight, and organizational policies. Funders want assurance that their investment will be managed responsibly. Strong governance demonstrates accountability and reduces risk. Organizations with clear governance structures are more likely to implement programs effectively and manage funds appropriately. By the end of this lesson, you will understand what funders look for in governance descriptions, how to present your leadership structure effectively, and how to address common governance concerns that reviewers may raise about your organization. Governance matters significantly to funders for several important reasons. Accountability answers who ensures responsible use of funds. Funders want to know that oversight exists beyond staff members who receive salaries from the grant. Boards provide external accountability and independent judgment. Oversight examines what systems prevent mismanagement and ensure proper stewardship of resources. Policies, procedures, and review processes protect against problems before they occur. Funders want assurance that controls exist and function effectively. Stability considers whether leadership provides continuity over time. Organizations survive staff transitions when governance is strong and institutionalized. Board continuity matters when executive directors change or staff turns over. Risk mitigation recognizes that strong governance reduces funder risk significantly. Investment in well-governed organizations is safer and more likely to produce intended results. Governance strength directly affects funding decisions. Board of Directors descriptions should convey both composition and function. For composition, describe the size, diversity, and expertise of your board. How many members serve? What professional backgrounds do they bring? What communities do they represent? A board with varied expertise can provide better governance than one dominated by a single profession or perspective. Include information about demographics, if relevant to demonstrating community representation. For function, describe what your board actually does beyond meeting attendance. Does the board set strategic direction, review financial statements, evaluate the executive director, approve major expenditures? Active boards that exercise genuine oversight are more credible than passive boards that rubber stamp staff decisions. Meeting frequency signals engagement level. Boards that meet quarterly demonstrate more active oversight than those meeting annually. If your board meets frequently or has active committees, mention this as evidence of engagement. Board development shows investment in governance quality. Do you provide board orientation, ongoing training, regular self-assessment? These activities suggest commitment to governance excellence beyond minimum requirements. Describing your board demonstrates governance strength. Composition includes number of members, terms, and diversity. How many board members do you have? How long are terms? Is your board diverse in background, perspective, and demographics? Expertise highlights professional backgrounds relevant to mission. What skills do board members bring? Legal, financial, programmatic expertise. Board expertise strengthens organizational capacity. Engagement includes meeting frequency and committee structure. How often does the board meet? What committees exist? Active boards demonstrate commitment. Independence emphasizes absence of conflicts of interest. Are board members independent of staff and contractors? Do policies prevent conflicts? Independence protects integrity. Executive leadership descriptions complement board information. The executive director or CEO description covers the chief executive role and qualifications. Who leads day-to-day operations? What qualifications do they bring? Executive strength matters. Leadership team describes key positions and responsibilities. Who are other senior leaders? What functions do they oversee? Team depth provides capacity beyond one person. Succession planning describes continuity provisions. What happens if the executive director leaves? Is there a succession plan? Planning demonstrates foresight. Stability indicators include tenure and turnover rates. How long have leaders been in place? What is staff retention? Stability suggests organizational health. Fiscal oversight demonstrates that your organization has systems to protect funder investments and ensure appropriate use of grant funds. Key elements include describing your financial management systems and controls. What accounting software do you use? What procedures ensure accurate record keeping? How are expenditures approved and documented? Audit history provides important credibility. If you have received clean audits, mention this explicitly. If you have had audit findings in the past that have been resolved, you can briefly note the improvement. Organizations subject to the single audit requirement should describe their compliance history. Internal controls prevent misuse of funds. Describe your separation of duties, approval hierarchies, and reconciliation procedures. Who can authorize purchases? How are invoices matched to purchase orders? What happens when discrepancies are discovered? These details may seem mundane, but they demonstrate operational maturity. Banking and cash management practices also matter. Describe how funds are secured and managed. If you maintain required insurance, including fidelity bonds, mention this as evidence of appropriate risk management. Key policies to mention in governance descriptions include those that demonstrate organizational professionalism and risk management. Conflict of interest policies show that your organization has procedures to identify and manage situations where personal interests might conflict with organizational duties. Describe how conflicts are disclosed and how decisions are made when conflicts exist. Whistleblower policies demonstrate commitment to ethical operations by providing protected channels for reporting concerns. This is increasingly important to funders concerned about accountability. Document retention policies show organized record-keeping practices. How long do you keep financial records, personnel files, and program documentation? Proper retention supports both accountability and institutional memory. Non-discrimination policies demonstrate commitment to equity and compliance with federal requirements. Equal opportunity employment practices should be explicitly mentioned. If you have additional policies around diversity, equity, and inclusion, these may be relevant depending on the funder. Financial policies, including procurement procedures, travel reimbursement guidelines, and cost allocation methods, demonstrate systematic approaches to financial management that funders want to see. Organizational structure shows how you are arranged to do work. The org chart provides visual representation of reporting relationships. Who reports to whom? How is the organization structured? Visual representation aids understanding. Departments or units show how work is organized. Do you have program departments? Administrative functions? How is work divided and coordinated? Reporting lines establish clear chain of accountability. Each position should know who they report to. Each supervisor should know who reports to them. Clarity prevents confusion. Decision authority specifies who decides what. What decisions require board approval? What can the executive director decide? What authority do managers have? Clear authority enables action. Federal requirements apply to federal grant recipients. Single audit is required for federal expenditures over the threshold, currently $750,000. Organizations spending significant federal funds must have audits meeting federal standards. SAM registration in the System for Award Management is required for federal grants. Your organization must be registered and maintain current registration. This is a prerequisite for federal funding. FATA reporting under the Federal Funding Accountability and Transparency Act requires reporting certain information. Subawards and executive compensation may require disclosure. Specific certifications cover debarment, lobbying, and drug-free workplace. Federal grants require certifications that you are eligible and will comply with requirements. These are typically part of application forms. What funders want to see in governance descriptions varies somewhat by funder type, but certain elements are universally valued. Funders want evidence of active, engaged board oversight rather than a rubber stamp board that simply approves staff recommendations. Describe how your board provides genuine governance, including setting strategic direction, ensuring fiscal accountability, and evaluating organizational performance. Funders want to see appropriate separation between governance and management. The board governs while staff manages. Blurring these roles raises concerns. Funders want diversity on your board in terms of skills, perspectives, and demographics. A board with varied professional backgrounds brings different expertise to governance. Demographic diversity demonstrates community connections and broad support. Funders want to see board development and succession planning. How do you recruit new board members? How do you orient and develop them? What happens when key board members depart? Evidence of intentional board development suggests organizational sustainability. Funders also want to see that board members are personally invested in the organization, whether through giving, volunteering, or community connections. Red flags to avoid in governance descriptions include anything that suggests inadequate oversight, conflicts of interest, or organizational instability. Avoid describing a board that appears to be a rubber stamp for staff decisions. Phrases like the board always approves staff recommendations suggest inadequate oversight. Instead, describe substantive board engagement with key decisions. Avoid revealing governance problems you have not resolved. If you have had board turnover, leadership transitions, or governance challenges, either address these directly by explaining how they were resolved or do not mention them at all. Raising concerns without resolution creates doubt. Avoid listing board members without explaining their relevance. A list of names means little. Describe the expertise and community connections that board members bring. Avoid describing an overly large or overly small board without explanation. Very large boards may struggle to function effectively, while very small boards may lack adequate oversight. If your board size is unusual, explain why it works for your organization. Avoid revealing conflicts of interest without explaining how they are managed. If board members have potential conflicts, describe your conflict of interest policy and procedures. Writing governance sections effectively requires strategic choices. Brevity means concise description of key elements. Governance sections should not be long. Hit the key points without excessive detail. Evidence means specific facts rather than general claims. Our 15-member board meets monthly is better than we have an active board. Specifics are credible. Relevance means focusing on elements funders care about. Not every policy needs mention. Focus on fiscal oversight, conflict management, and key governance indicators. Confidence means presenting strengths without defensiveness. State your governance strengths clearly. Do not apologize for what you lack or over-explain weaknesses. An example governance paragraph demonstrates effective structure. The template begins with organization name governed by a specific number-member board of directors meeting at stated frequency, then add relevant details about committees, expertise, and financial oversight. Include board composition, meeting frequency, committees, and audit status. Key elements funders want should appear. Specific facts build credibility. Avoid generic claims without specifics. Saying you have strong governance means nothing. Showing specific governance elements demonstrates strength. Customize by adapting to funder requirements and emphasis. Some funders want extensive governance detail. Others want brief assurance. Match the depth to expectations. Here is a practical exercise to apply what you have learned. Step 1. List your board members and their professional backgrounds. What expertise do they bring? How does the board composition demonstrate capacity? Step 2. Identify 3 governance policies you have in place. Conflict of interest, financial policies, personnel policies. Know what policies exist. Step 3. Note your most recent audit results. When was your last audit? What were findings? Clean audits are assets. Step 4. Draft a governance paragraph for a proposal. Include board composition, meeting frequency, key policies, and audit status. Make it specific and concise. Let us summarize the key points from this lesson on governance and leadership. Governance matters to funders because it provides accountability beyond staff, demonstrates organizational stability, and reduces the risk of fund misuse. Strong governance descriptions address board composition, highlighting relevant expertise and community connections, board engagement demonstrating active oversight rather than passive approval, fiscal oversight explaining financial controls and audit compliance, and organizational policies that show professional management practices. What funders want to see includes active, engaged boards, appropriate separation of governance and management, diversity in board composition, and evidence of board development. Red flags to avoid include rubber stamp boards, unresolved governance problems, unexplained board composition, and conflicts of interest without management procedures. Presenting governance effectively requires balancing transparency about your structures with strategic framing that builds confidence. In our next lesson, we will explore staffing models, examining how to describe your team structure, qualifications, and roles in grant proposals.